Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into behavioral finance. It's all about the hidden psychology that's secretly pulling the strings on the money decisions you make every single day. And we're going to kick things off with a really simple question.
So, have you ever looked back at a financial choice you made, maybe a few months or a year later, and just thought to yourself, what on earth was I thinking? Trust me, you are not alone. It's one of the biggest puzzles in finance, why do really smart, really capable people sometimes make, well, truly baffling decisions with their cash. The answer, as it turns out, has a lot less to do with math and spreadsheets and a whole lot more to do with what's going on right up here in our heads. To really get why we make these kinds of mistakes, we first have to take down a very old, very persistent myth, the idea of the perfect, totally rational investor.
You see, for a long time, almost all economic theories were built on this massive assumption that when it comes to money, people are completely logical beings. The models all pictured this ideal investor who would always, without fail, make the perfect choice to get the most for themselves. It's a nice, clean idea for sure, but it's missing one huge, messy variable: human nature.
I mean, just look at this list. This rational investor sounds less like a person and more like a superhero, or maybe a robot. Perfectly rational, flawless self-control, totally immune to mental mistakes. The thing is, of course, that none of us, not one, are actually wired that way.
And that, right there, brings us to the much more realistic and frankly, more interesting world of behavioral finance. It starts from a different place entirely. It accepts that we aren't robots. And from there, it paints a completely different picture of how we really act.
This chart just says it all, doesn't it? It shows the huge shift in thinking. Traditional finance was always aiming for rational, but behavioral finance just accepts that we're, well, normal. We don't have perfect self-control, we have real limits. We're not immune to making mistakes, our thinking is shaped by biases. And because of all that, the markets aren't always rational machines. They can be wild, emotional roller coasters.
So, at the end of the day, behavioral finance is just the study of how our very human, very messy psychology affects our financial choices, and then how all those individual choices add up and ripple out to affect the entire market. It's basically the bridge between economic theory and the way our brains are actually wired.
And this is a really important point to remember. These mental shortcuts, these biases, they aren't a sign that you're somehow bad at money. No. They're actually a sign that your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do, with instincts and emotions that, can sometimes just get in the way of a perfectly logical financial move.
So what do these mental glitches actually look like out in the real world? Let's break down 4 of the most common mental traps that can seriously mess with our money.
First on the list is a big one: loss aversion. Here's the deal. Psychologically, losing $100 hurts way more than finding $100 feels good. Our brains are fundamentally hardwired to avoid losses, sometimes at any cost.
And this leads directly to something investors call the disposition effect. We absolutely hate the idea of making a loss official. So what do? We hang on to a failing stock just hoping and praying it'll come back. On the flip side, when a stock is doing well, we get anxious and sell it way too early just to lock in that small win, totally missing out on bigger potential gains down the road.
All right, next up, herd behavior. We are social animals, plain and simple. We have this deep instinctual need to follow the crowd. It just feels safer to do what everyone else is doing, even if everyone else is running straight for a cliff.
This is pretty much the engine that drives market madness. When some new stock is hot, everyone piles in, inflating a massive bubble. And then, when a little panic sets in, everyone sprints for the exit all at once, causing a crash. It's the fear of missing out and the fear of being left behind, all wrapped up into one incredibly powerful force.
Third on our list, we have something called anchoring. Our brains have this funny habit of latching onto the very first piece of information we hear, and then we use that piece of info as a reference point, or an anchor, for every decision that follows.
So for example, let's say you bought a stock at $50. That $50 price gets stuck in your head. Now, even if the entire company's situation changes for the worse, you'll still be judging its value against that initial $50 anchor, which might be totally and completely irrelevant by now.
And last but not least, we have confirmation bias. This one is all about our brain's deep desire to be right. We actively go looking for information that proves what we already believe, and we tend to ignore or even argue against anything that challenges our point of view.
So if you're really excited about an investment you made, you'll probably find yourself clicking on every single positive headline about it.
Meanwhile, you'll just scroll right past any articles that are warning about potential risks. It creates this little echo chamber in your head that just reinforces your original decision, whether it was a good one or not.
Okay, so our brains are basically full of these little tripwires. That might sound a bit discouraging, I know, but here is the good news. Just knowing they exist is half the battle. So now let's talk about how to actually outsmart our own instincts. The very first step is to understand that we have two different ways of thinking. There's the reflexive system, that's your gut feeling. It's fast, it's automatic, and it's where all these biases live. Then you have the reflective system. This is your slow, logical, methodical mind. It takes real effort to fire it up, but it's our absolute best defense against making those impulsive, emotional decisions.
So the goal then is to build a process that forces you to use that reflective brain. It's a simple three-step process. First, you prepare, which is just understanding these biases, and hey, you're doing that right now. Second, you plan, which means you create a set of logical rules for your decisions before you're in the heat of the moment. And finally, you pre-commit. You promise yourself you'll stick to that plan no matter how emotional or scary things get.
You know, this quote from Warren Buffett just nails it. Success in this game isn't really about being the smartest person in the room. It's about having the emotional discipline, what he calls the temperament, to control those gut reactions, those urges that get so many other people into trouble. So what's the bottom line here? It's actually pretty simple. You can't just get rid of these biases. They're baked into our DNA. But what you can do is learn to manage them. And in that battle, awareness is your superpower.
Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. Now that you know about these mental traps, loss aversion, herding, anchoring, confirmation bias, which one are you going to be on the lookout for first? Answering that question for yourself? Well, that's the first real step to outsmarting your own brain.